What's up, folks? Welcome back to the Stupid Fans Club podcast. I am your host, Shaan Donn, and welcome to the club. What a weekend we had in sports this weekend, specifically college football. We had some crazy endings, had some good matchups, got to see who's some contenders, who's some pretenders on the college side, and we got an updated top 25. So we'll go through that. But most importantly, we have the UGA at Bama. Big game this weekend in college. That's going to be an incredible game. I think it's the biggest matchup so far this season. So I can't wait to see that. I am nervous. As you see, I got my gear on. But that's going to be an incredible matchup. So we'll break that down. And then we got some NFL stuff. Falcons, Chiefs, contenders and pretenders in the NFL. It's time to weed them out. And then, of course, the Anthony Joshua and Du Bois fight this weekend, which ended in a bang. So we'll go over that, end it with some weekend matchups to circle. So let's get right into it. Falcons, Chiefs, Sunday Night Football. I've talked about it before. I'll say it again. I do not like my Falcons on primetime games. I am happy that we are in them because that means we're thought highly of, or somewhat highly of. Now it's been a while since we've been able to be in one of those type of games, but Sunday Night Football, playing the defending champs in our city. That was exciting. It was a good game, ended obviously not on our side, but it was a good back and forth game. And I think it was a lot closer than most people would have thought. So Falcons started off strong, of course. It felt like we had a lot of energy coming out, and then the momentum began to shift once our two offensive linemen went down in that first half. That was a big blow. I think you started to see them get a little more pressure, and our running game just could never get going. In the midst, it didn't take very long at all for me to watch that game and see why Kansas City is so difficult to beat. First of all, they have a solid defense, but their offensive drives, the best way to describe it is surgical. Obviously, you have Patrick Mahomes as the quarterback, so that helps a ton. But they pretty much play, and they weren't always like this. Back when they had Tyreek Hill and that explosive offense, it was 1-2 plays, touchdown. But now it is very take what you give me all the way down the field, and we're going to just take up a bunch of time. What that does is limit your possessions as the opponent. And you already know you're going up against Patrick Mahomes. That's intimidating in itself. But the room for error is so small. One, because you're playing against Patrick Mahomes. Two, because you don't get that many possessions. They take their time down the field, and they, again, just take up so much clock. Their time in possession was crazy. I felt like maybe in that first half, the Falcons had it felt like they had like 2 or 3 possessions all half. I'm sure it was more, but again, they were just taking up so much time in these surgical drives, and it was tough. So that was one of the first things I noticed with playing Kansas City. And then again, we got that running game just was non-existent after our offensive linemen went down. And it wasn't until late in the game where the Falcons offense got moving again. And it was frustrating to see our defense out there getting big stop after big, huge stops. When you're playing Patrick Mahomes, it's only a matter of time before they get in that rhythm and start scoring. And so when our defense is out there making stop after stop and our offense is going 3-and-out or can't get anything going, it is just absolutely frustrating. So that was tough, but we did get going late when we absolutely had to have it. The Falcons move all the way down the field, and controversial no call here. There was a pass to Kyle Pitts. To me, it was clear pass interference. I'm not sure why that wasn't called. The defender had his back turned, never turned his head around, and he got to Kyle Pitts before the ball got to him. Clear pass interference that would have set us up at the 1st and goal. We aren't the best running team, as we can see. Well, not that night. But I think we could have gotten the end zone at that point, which changes the dynamics here, possibly walking away with the win. But it wasn't called. The Falcons chose to go for it on 4th down instead of kicking the field goal. Controversial call. Obviously, hindsight, people are saying should have kicked the field goal, blah blah blah. But I don't have a problem with that at all. And it was a gamble, but it paid off. The Falcons ended up stopping them after that and getting the ball back with another opportunity to win the football game. And this is what it all came down to. The Falcons are moving the ball. Drake London makes a big play to go downfield, and he falls just short. It was on 2nd down, and he falls just short of the 1st down marker. And as a fan, again, this is why it's called Stupid Fans. I know that I am portraying my frustration here, but I foresaw this all the way. I have been a Falcons fan for my entire life. I know my team so well. I foresaw how this would end. When he didn't get that 1st down, when he fell just short, about a yard short, I text my friend and told him, man, he has to get that 1st down. He has to push through and get to the 1st down, because now we're in a situation where we are in striking range, but we got to get the 1st down before we can start thinking about, oh, all right, let's take shots to the end zone. We need a yard. And sure enough, we run it with Algier. He gets nothing. We try to run to the outside with Bijan. He loses like 4 yards on it. I don't want to overreact here. I will say it was a terrible play call. It was a terrible play call. By the time Bijan got the ball, there were so many Chiefs in the backfield. Like, it was one of the plays, as soon as you saw them run it, you knew it wasn't going to work. It was to the point where I was like, Bijan might as well have tried to flick it back to Kirk and hope for a miraculous throw or something. After that 3rd down run, I would have much rather us go play action. They were sitting there waiting for us to try to run it, which leads me into my next point. Is Kirk Cousins healthy? We need a yard. We can't quarterback sneak. Do we feel that uncertain about his health, his Achilles, his knee, whatever it is? Are we that uncertain about it? If so, let's start implementing Penix. Penix is not a running quarterback. He is known for his passing as well, but he is mobile. I did not realize how immobile Kirk Cousins was until the season started, and really it just doubled down in this game. If he had to run for his life, he couldn't. You have to have a Tom Brady level of offensive line in order to protect that type of quarterback today. Our offensive line has no room for error, which is why I brought up that is where you started to see the shift when our two starting offensive linemen went out early. If he doesn't have perfect protection, I mean, on those two drives where we scored in that first half, Kirk Cousins looked great. He's shown that if you give him time, he's going to find a guy and we're going to move the ball down the field. The problem is that's just not the way of the NFL today. At some point, you're going to have to get out of that pocket and make a play, extend a play. Once I saw them the Chiefs didn't even try to stuff the middle. They knew Kirk Cousins wasn't going for a sneak. And so again, call me crazy, but in situations where we need some mobility, we possibly may need an extended play, someone who can create more time for themselves without just the perfect level of blocking for 18 seconds back there. I would implement Penix in those cases. Put him in for the quarterback sneak. The good thing about a quarterback sneak is everybody knows you're going to do it, but that doesn't mean you can stop it. I.e. the Philadelphia Eagles. It was less than a yard. It was inches. And the play calling, not only on that play, all night, it was questionable. And up to this point in the season, it's been questionable. We were supposed to have this dynamic offense. Again, the problem with the Falcons was the quarterback. We have the weapons. And we have an elite defense, clearly. It was just we needed somebody who could get it out there to them. Kirk, in my opinion, anybody is better than what we had last year. And no shade to Desmond Ridder. It was just the results. Kirk Cousins is a step up from that. But again, if you don't have mobility in today's NFL, you're setting yourself up for failure. And again, I just was not prepared for how immobile Kirk Cousins was. And I felt like that hurt us. That in the play calling. That has to get better. And it was frustrating because you saw it on the last drive. After that first quarter where we had the touchdown, and I think Kyle Pitts had that big play, I almost forgot Drake London and Kyle Pitts played on the team. Our number one receivers are our 3 and 4 receivers, Ray McLeod and Mooney. They're more involved in the offense than our star players. And of course, Bijan, but I mean, in the receiving core, the play calling has got to get better. When you look at the Chiefs offense, you know Rashee Rice is their number one receiver. Why? Because he gets the ball every other play. They're constantly getting him involved. Frustrating ending for the Falcons. They don't get the 4th down conversion, lose the game. Very winnable game. And that just leads us into the good, bad, and ugly. I got carried away, and as you can probably see, my frustration. The Falcons already went through the bad and the ugly. Bad, I had Kirk Cousins' immobility. Ugly was the play calling, awful play calling. The good is Falcons defense, clearly an elite defense in the NFL. I think we can go head to head with anyone. They just look great. They made big stop after big stop. They've shown it in our previous games. I'm confident in our defense, and that was the defending champs. We have the number one toughest schedule in the NFL this year. But if you have a good defense and that defense continues to buy our offense some time, I feel like if we can get that play calling down and we can create an identity for ourselves on offense, which is you can't have an identity if you don't have the right play calls. Like once we get that figured out, I feel like the Falcons can be a very, very dangerous team. But obviously we're still figuring it out. Kirk Cousins has come out and been very open about that. So more to come. And for the Chiefs, good, bad, and ugly, I think they were able to find a way to win a game. Again, this wasn't a game where the Chiefs just wowed us. It wasn't these crazy explosive plays. Their offense is very, take what you give me. We're just going to go downfield. And there's just no panic. That was another thing I noticed. Kirk Cousins, Patrick Mahomes threw a pick, and it was almost as if he didn't care. Just ran back to the sideline. It's like, oh, it's regular. But you just know with the Chiefs, it's only a matter of time, which is what I was saying all night, man. Like with the Falcons offense, you can't just keep asking your defense to stop this offense. You can't really do that with any team, but you got to give us some production on the offensive side. So hopefully the Falcons take something from how that last drive was going, not how it ended, but how it was going and flowing, and we take that into the rest of the season. So yeah, that was the good for the Chiefs, just able to find a way to win it. The bad was you could tell their offense still isn't fully in sync, and they are not able to implement Travis Kelce or get him involved at all. He had another quiet game, and it's just overall as an offense, it's not the same off the charts, just scoring every drive type of offense, similar to what we saw last year with them. But their defense was strong, and they are again this year too. So that'll be interesting to see. Do they improve over the years or throughout the year, or is it going to be kind of just have to gut it out? And the ugly, I think, for them was Travis Kelce just being a non-factor, which makes you question. Last year you heard those rumors of, is Kelce getting ready to retire? Is this his last year? Is it coming to an end? His brother just retired. Just wondering how much is left in the tank. And to answer that, I think you kind of have to look at is from a bird's eye view. Is it a offensive play calling issue, or is it a Travis Kelce issue? And then Patrick Mahomes had he spoke on it and said, teams are making a concerted effort to take him away. They're double and triple teaming him, have guys all around him. But I don't know if that's it, because would they have not been doing that before? I mean, before Rashee Rice, Kelce was the number one go-to. So that didn't really add up for me. So it's starting to look like it may be a Kelce thing. Like maybe he's overstayed his welcome. Definitely too early in the season to say for sure, but it does make you question it. This is now week 3. He's had very, very little impact. And we're talking about a tight end who's going to go down as one of the best ever. So this type of drop off is peculiar. So we'll keep an eye on that. That was Falcons Chiefs, and then we had the Eagles Saints game, which was surprising. We got some key things to talk about with this game. The Eagles defense stumped the Hot Rocket Saints. They held that high power offense to 12 points, no touchdowns until the fourth quarter. And it was a defensive game, so it wasn't like they were stomping them and then the Eagles offense was just exploding. It wasn't that at all. It was a very defensive game. I think when I started watching it, it was maybe 3-0 late in the game. It was a big time touchdown run for Saquon, which put the Eagles up, and then New Orleans responded right back with a touchdown pass. But it was the late drive from the Eagles to seal the deal. Goddard had a huge run on 3rd and 16. Huge catch and run that pretty much sealed the deal for them. I think Carr threw an interception after that, which really put the nail in the coffin. But the Eagles do win, but it was kind of another escape. They now don't have A.J. Brown, and they lost Devontae Smith in that game. And they already were, I felt like when the Falcons played them last week they seemed like a team that only wanted to throw the ball when they needed to, and I think they do have holes still in that team. They don't. It's again, they're not a fluid offense yet, and I don't. That's a lot to ask for any team in week 3. A lot of teams are still figuring it out, but it was a huge game for that defense to stop the Saints. I mean, the way they were scoring, they look like one of the best teams in the NFL. This looked like the resurgence of Derek Carr, and it was looking like, and obviously still can be, but they were the favorites to run away with the NFC South, especially after seeing how easily the Falcons ran against the Eagles. You said, oh boy, coming into this game with New Orleans, you thought they were going to just replicate that, as the Eagles defense didn't look all that scary, even though they have some big names on that front line and on the defensive side in general. But they were able to stop them. They turned things around, held them to 12 points again. But Eagles offense definitely seems like it is a Saquon or nothing thing. Again, they didn't score a touchdown until Saquon took it to the house. And again, he looks scary. He looks like a straight beast out there. But that was Eagles, Saints. And then we had the Cowboys and Ravens. What a game. It turned into, do I need to turn this off? And then it turned into like, wow, this is looking historically bad for the Ravens. Dominant first half by the Ravens. They were up 28-6 going into the fourth. Cowboys couldn't get anything going at all. But here comes the furious comeback in the fourth quarter. They somehow only end up losing this game 28-25. There was a missed field goal by Justin Tucker, who has been off this year. Something to keep an eye on. But it was starting to feel a little familiar for us Falcons fans. By the way, Fox, I don't know why we just all of a sudden got this stray. I guess they're pandering. I do know why. That's why. Tom Brady as the commentator, pandering, and Falcons fans just catch a stray of 28-3, showing a guy with that shirt on. That was ugly. Like, I'm just sitting there watching a regular football game. My team doesn't play until later Sunday night, and I see that on the screen. I'm like, come on, guys, really? But then it actually turned into that almost. It was crazy. I think you thought the game was over. Ravens were in complete control, but all of a sudden that Cowboys offense came alive, and again ended up losing, but were able to cut it down to 3. The Ravens are struggling to close out games. I felt like their first game, you're playing Kansas City, opening night in Kansas City. You lost by a toe being on the line, and close loss. Who cares? It won't matter in the long run. And then you fail to close it out against the Raiders, who aren't a very good football team. I'm like, okay, that's an anomaly. But then you're up huge against the Cowboys, 28-6 in the fourth quarter. And then you can't score anymore. It just was it was very strange, and I think they really need to get that together, because I mean, they were staring down at 0-3 there, and that would have been ugly. But nonetheless, Lamar is able to close it out for them. Derrick Henry had a big dominant game, and I think they will be a team to be reckoned with, but they need to get that together. That was much too close for comfort. Dak and CeeDee Lamb are not on the same page. One thing I did not like at all with CeeDee Lamb is I heard that he wasn't a diva at some point, but now it's clear he's pouting the entire game. Like it's just body language was awful. Every time he didn't get the ball, it felt like he was throwing a temper tantrum. He just looked, and again, it sucks to lose. It sucks to be getting blown out. But I don't know. I just didn't like his body language and how he looked out there. Very very poor. Obviously, they're trying, and it started to prevail. But we can't give you the ball every time. We can't force feed you. That's how you throw picks. And then Dak is the one who takes up the blame for it. It's like it's not always there, man. So that was just something I noted through the game. But they have to get on the same page in order to win. Their defense does look suspect still, but they did shut out the Ravens in the second half, I believe. So something for them to build on, but something they definitely have to get better because, if you can't stop anybody, it doesn't matter if you score or not, really. And now let's jump into the top 5 contenders and the top 5 pretenders in the NFL. I have, for the top 5 contenders, number 1, Kansas City. And my reasoning for that is it's self-explanatory. They're the defending champs. They have Patrick Mahomes. Whenever he's on the field, they are a threat to win it all. So that team is going to have to be beat. And after seeing it up close and personal this weekend, it's going to be very tough to do. So they're number 1 on my contenders list. Number 2, I'm standing on it, the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota looks for real. They have an explosive offense, and they have a strong defense. They look like the real deal. They showed it again last year. I think if Justin Jefferson can stay healthy, and it's a big ask and it's a big if, but if Sam Darnold can keep up this play, watch out. Number 2 on my contenders list right now, they look dangerous. Number 3, the Buffalo Bills. Here they come. They are playing with a chip on their shoulder. I felt like they obviously heard the offseason talk. Everybody thought the Buffalo Bills were going to fall off of a cliff. They lost Diggs. They felt like their window had closed. And now they look like one of the best teams in the league, if not the best. The defense still looks strong. Looks like they've gotten better, really. And something to note, man. Is it Stephon Diggs? It seems like these teams always seem to get better after Stephon Diggs leaves. I heard that he's not the best locker room guy. I heard that, speaking of wide receiver divas, I heard that he's one of those. And I just find it weird. The place of weakness coming into the season for Buffalo was their wide receiver core. Obviously a big pickup in the draft with Keon Coleman, but all of a sudden they just look unstoppable. Josh Allen playing great, not turning the ball over, scoring big. I mean, another team that's a true contender out here. 4, I'm going there. After we just talked about their struggles, I trust the Baltimore Ravens. That's my 4th spot. I do. Again, I thought that first win or first loss against Kansas City, primetime game, came down to the wire. They looked fine. I think Baltimore is going to get it together. Again, I think all of their issues that I saw with them are fixable. And they lost close games, just not able to close things out. We've seen them close games out before. And they have a great quarterback. They have a great system. I think they'll be just fine. So I have them on my number 4 for the contender list, even though they are 1-2 right now. And then wrapping it up, number 5, San Fran. The 49ers, this is just gut here because they lost a comeback game last week. They lost the week before that. So I think they're 1-2 now, but I just think they're going to get it together once they're fully healthy. I think that's the biggest thing here. Jawan Jennings looks to be their number one receiver right now. No Christian McCaffrey, no Debo, no Kittle. They have to get healthy. I do think they're good enough to stay afloat until these things happen, but I do think they may, take some losses here early. But once everyone is able to come back healthy, I think they make a furious run and get hot at the right time. So they have not fallen off of my contender list, but it's a little shaky there. And then honorable mention are the Detroit Lions. I've been shortchanging them for a while here with these lists, but I do think they're still a competitive team. My biggest thing, I think I mentioned this in the episode before too, is that it's a difference between being the hunter and being hunted. I think last year they were the hunters. Everyone realized that Detroit is a serious team. They can't be taken lightly. But now everybody knows it, and they're coming after them. So I'd like to see how Jared Goff deals with that and how the organization as a whole does with that just different dynamic of pressure there. They did get the win this week, so we'll see how their season goes, but definitely on that borderline of I think they are a good team, contender as well. The more entertaining list, the pretenders. I have Philly as number 1. I believe in Saquon. I don't know about anybody else. I, of course, believe in A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, but I don't like how they are winning these games. You go back to the late Falcons loss. I don't like how they seem suspect in the passing game, and I just think their defense is suspect. They had a good showing, so we'll see if they pick it up because they should be a ton better than they actually are right now. But I just don't have a world of confidence in them, and it's starting to look like a repeat of last year. So we'll see how they play out. Number 2, Dallas Cowboys. They had a big win in week 1 against the Browns. They looked like the real deal, shut down Cleveland, and now we see what Cleveland is. Looks like Deshaun Watson may not get back to that Houston Deshaun Watson anymore, and they're just not a very good team right now. And so kind of look at it like, oh, that may have been a fluke win. And then New Orleans comes to town, and they put up 7,000 points on your defense. Place of pride for you all. Got Trayvon Diggs back. Obviously have Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence. A different team, but you got the same core as these past few years. So interesting to see the decline in their defense, and I just think they have to get that together. No more Dan Quinn, and they've definitely seen to decline since that point. And then of course Dak and CD, as I mentioned earlier, just not on the same page. So I have them as the pretenders now. I think it's pretty clear that they have big issues, but still threw them on that pretender list. Seattle Seahawks, I got them at number 3 as a pretender. I don't all the way I'm not all the way sold on them. They are a 3-win team, but the 3 wins aren't against great teams. They beat the Broncos, and they beat the Patriots in overtime by a field goal, and then they played the depleted Dolphins, or no QB Dolphins at least. And so I think they have a much tougher schedule here coming up. Got the Lions next week. 49ers come in. They play the Falcons here soon. So I think the competition will get a lot more stiff, and we'll see. But I think they may be, a team that's similar to last year, middle of the road, but not as good as they seem right now. And then number 4, pretenders. I have the Houston Texans, and it pains me to say it. My favorite player, C.J. Stroud. They have a questionable offensive line, and who knows with their defense. They kind of snuck into the playoffs last year, and they were a playoff team. Like, they were good enough to make the playoffs in that division. They were good enough to beat the Colts at the end of the year to get the playoff berth. But when they made the playoffs, they had to play the number 1 seed. They were no match for them, and I kind of see something like that. I think everyone is expecting them to step up here, as they obviously have Tank Dell, C.J. Stroud, rookie of the year, and adding Stephon Diggs, Nico out there, who's a beast. They have the weapons, but I mean, as we saw seeing with the Falcons, you got to have an offensive line to be able to be effective. So I have them as a pretender. They are 2-1. I hope they prove me wrong, but we'll see. Number 5, New Orleans Saints. I have them as a pretender because, and this sounds crazy, because I had them as one of the best teams just last week. But after seeing them play the Eagles, it made me question their other 2 wins now, because the Dallas win is what made us really say, like, oh, they're for real. Now we kind of see, oh, no, Dallas just doesn't have a good defense, or has a defense not playing very well right now. And then you go back to week 1, you beat up on the Carolina Panthers, who are a team to watch. To an extent. But that was something that just put things into perspective and made you say, are the Saints really explosive, or were they just going up against poor teams, poor defenses? I have them as a pretender. And part of the reason is because I'm a Falcons fan and I don't like the Saints. So, yeah, I have that. We will see. Falcons have the Saints next week. So that will be one to watch. Obviously, rival game there. But we'll see. My contenders and pretenders for the NFL there. And then the quick hits. The Packers defeat the Titans, Malik Willis's old team, and they are now undefeated with Malik Willis. They are 2-1, and he did his job. I think Jordan Love is supposed to come back next week, and the Packers look good. Packers are holding on and hoping, Jordan Love can step back in and get them, or keep the train rolling. I was going to say get back on track, but they're on track. So big show for the Packers there, and Malik Willis. Vikings crush the Texans, absolutely crush them, 34-7. And again, I think they're one of the best teams in the league right now. They look serious. They look dangerous. Sam Darnold is for real, and we already know about JJ. So Jettas, as he says, but big time showing for the Vikings. They look dangerous. And then the Broncos, like, who expected this? They crushed the Bucs 26-7. That was unprecedented. Like, no one expected the Broncos to come into Tampa Bay and do that to them. So big win for the Broncos to get their first win of the year. Bad loss for the Bucs. I think a lot of people were high on them after the first couple of weeks. So bad home loss for them. And then the Rams come back and beat the 49ers. Obviously, both of those teams are banged up. And they were trying to figure things out. Obviously, the Rams didn't want to go 0-3. So big win for them and disappointing loss for the 49ers. I think they're going to have to definitely tighten their belt buckle here, bite down and try to get through these next few weeks without taking too many losses. They don't have the bodies right now on the offensive side. Ironic because, I think this is a great time for Brock Purdy. Not off to a great start with losing to the Rams and that comeback, but opportunity for him to show, like, no, I'm just a good quarterback. It's not that I'm just surrounded with all of these weapons, which will obviously always help, but his time to show, like, I can run the show. So we'll see how that plays out. And then I said we would talk about this in a second. The Panthers destroy the Raiders. First of all, that makes it look even worse for the Ravens. Like, how did y'all lose that game? But rivalry there, you know how rivalry games go. But the Panthers, that was unbelievable. And last week, a week or so ago, when Bryce Young was benched, all the talk was about, this is not Bryce Young's fault. This is an organizational problem. They benched him too early. This is crazy. Bryce Young is not the problem. Blah, 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 blah. How are we feeling this week? I want to say they put up 36. They won 36-22. Raiders had a big fourth quarter. But hey, this is a team that couldn't put up points. And as soon as the change was made in quarterbacks to Andy Dalton, they look like, why didn't you do this earlier? So definitely something to look at there. Like, hey, was it Bryce Young? Or was it the coaching and the organization and him being set up to fail? Because Andy Dalton, and he's a veteran here, so he's been down the road. But I don't know. It's a hard point to still stand on and prove after a quarterback just walks in his first week and puts up 36, and you all haven't been able to put up anything at all. So that was that. NFL, great week 3. Big games coming up in the next week. But we'll move on to college football. Let's go to the top 25 here. Updates here, not as big as it was the prior week. But top 5, we got Texas, Georgia, Ohio State, Bama, and Tennessee. Biggest change here was Tennessee moving up to the 5 spot. Just above Ole Miss. And again, still a heavily SEC dominated top 5 here. Rounding up the top 10, again, we have 6 Ole Miss, Miami at 7, Oregon 8. They moved up a bit. Penn State at 9, and Utah, the Utes, at 10. Still looking dangerous. Other big moves, Michigan moves up to 12 after their big win against SC. And I was very glad to see that they didn't drop South Carolina. They didn't drop USC to like 20s or something after that close loss to Michigan. I heard the description that was perfect for them, and we'll jump into this Michigan USC game too. But playing Michigan is like, it's like fighting in a phone booth. It's like they're a very physical, defensive-minded team and just run, ground and pound type of game. So, good to see. Still, SC still in it. They didn't play. They didn't play terrible. And yeah, that's that. Boise State at 25. Ashton Dempsey, unbelievable as always. Biggest drop here, I believe, was Oklahoma. Dropped to 21. I believe from 16, something around there. And then big jump for Clemson as well. They're back in the thick of things, destroying teams right now. So very, very interesting here in the top 25. More to come. Michigan versus USC. Michigan was able to pull it out against USC. Sort of looked like they were out of it there at the end, but a huge play by Michigan's running back. Spin out of that tackle. That was crazy. Very, very tough game. Like I said, it's an ugly game when you play against Michigan. I think they found their identity and what type of team they're going to be and have to be this year. And they have a good defense. They're going to make it as ugly as they possibly can to keep their offense in the game. And that's exactly what they did. They went up big, 14-0 early, and then USC was able to work their way back into it. Michigan is an all-running team, obviously with Alex Orji in there, but they are incapable of throwing the football. Like it's not even really an option for them, but they're darn good at running it. They showed that we don't need to throw it. And, Davis Warren gave them the best opportunity to throw the football, have a passing game, but just too many mistakes, and they decided to go with Alex Orji. But all running team, and it was definitely effective against SC. Obviously won them the game. But the question would be, is that play style sustainable? I think there is a world where Michigan can sneak into the college football playoff that way, but I think they would be an early exit. They would be a first round exit. Like once you start playing higher level teams, we saw it against Texas. That's just not going to work. Texas is too good. And then when you have to play that style, you can't go down. You can't go down in games because you have to find a way to enforce your play style and your will in every single game. And it just gets harder and harder to do against the higher caliber teams. They were able to do it. I felt like they were able to out-physical USC in this game. But again, against higher level competition, I just don't think it's going to work. So, but they're not out of it. Like they can make a run here, but they are one-dimensional on the offensive side, and their defense just has to try to keep them in these games and score points as they did in this one. So, big win for Michigan, but again, Miller Moss is great. They have some great weapons out there too. Not a bad loss for SC. Very tough road game. And they hung in there and had it. They had it. They just weren't able to close the door on Michigan. You gotta close the door at the end of these games. You gotta close out games. And it cost them. But I think they'll be just fine. The biggest game by far, Colorado and Baylor. That was unbelievable of an ending there. That was a back and forth game where Baylor started pulling away, and Baylor had it again. Talking about closing out games, they had that game. To get a Hail Mary thrown on you after another Hail Mary was just thrown on you and it was dropped. It's just like, you got to be like, man, there's no way we can, that was too close. There's no way it's going to happen again. Sure enough, that was unbelievable. I couldn't believe it. I thought like when he threw it and it looked like he caught him, like, oh, it had to have hit the ground. There's just no way. When they confirmed the catch, that was just wild. And this is why Colorado gets talked about so much. They are just like them, hate them, love them, must watch TV. They are must watch TV. That was incredible. They were able to, and again, speaking of resilience, I mean, they were able to fight back into that game. It seems like Colorado is a second half team. They don't look pretty early, but they keep themselves in it. And again, second week in a row, big shouts out to that defense. They are fantastic. They are keeping their team in it. And you know, if you have Travis Hunter, and Shador Sanders, Shante Webster, and all these guys on the offensive side, you know they can get things going. You just have to be able to stop teams and you know, give them some time. It seems like they don't want to show up until that second half, but huge win for Colorado. But the bigger story is Travis Hunter. I want to say Travis effing Hunter. He is by far the leading candidate in Heisman watch. I don't want to hear it at all. He's Shohei Ohtani. I pitch and I hit. I not only play offense and am the best player on offense, I play defense and I am probably the best player on defense. I'm like 7 catches, 100+ yards, and then to make that play to win the game in overtime. He is a winner. He is a dog, and he is the leading candidate in this Heisman race here. No debate about it. He's unbelievable, and who knows what he'll play in the NFL. It sounds like it's leaning towards DB, but I think it's going to be a package thing. He is too impactful on the offensive side not to use him. He's not one of those converted, like, all right, yeah, let's just play defense. He's a threat on the offensive side. A dangerous threat. Like, he is their best receiver. He makes impactful play after impactful play. The sky is the limit for that kid. He is unbelievable. Unbelievable. Best player all around in college football. And that is not to deflate anything Cam Ward is doing. He's obviously great. But we're talking about something we just haven't seen before. You're playing on that high of a level on both sides of the ball. I don't care if it's college. I don't care if you can do it in NFL or not. We haven't seen it before. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. But definitely, if I had a vote, and we voted today, he would be that pick. And I think he would be most people's. I mean, he's just undeniable. So yeah, Colorado versus Baylor. Colorado 3-1. Big for them. And then they have UCF this week. That's going to be a big game for them. I think UCF is an overwhelming favorite. Maybe a two touchdown, 14.5 point spread last time I looked at it. UCF is a good team, but Baylor was a good team too. Like, they are that was a big win to show that they can beat them, even though it was, a lot of people will call this a fluke game, so they're going to have to go out and reprove themselves. Even hanging in there with good teams, it is a big win for Colorado, and winning close games as well, something they couldn't do last year. So big win for Colorado, and excited to see them. Must watch TV as always. Tennessee versus Oklahoma, disappointing. Tennessee dominated the game. They won 25-15, and it was not that close at all. Nico looks great. He looks great, and Oklahoma doesn't have a bad defense, but he looks dangerous. I don't. I mean, the more and more I see these teams in the SEC, I'm just like, boy. I mean, it's going to be a bloodbath at the end of the season or in these playoffs. Like these, I mean, and even we play them in the regular season. Like it is. That's why this Bama game coming up is so big because it's like, how good are these teams? Like everybody looks good right now, but it's still just so early in the season. This Bama Georgia game is really our first test to be like, okay, Georgia did this against a top five team. Bama did this against a top five team. So that'll be interesting. But OU was no match for Tennessee. They had no quarterback. They had no offensive productivity whatsoever. They couldn't move the ball at all. And Tennessee's defense is great, but that's more of an Oklahoma problem. They looked awful. And I was really excited about that game. First test to get to see, but it was clear that Tennessee is, just on another level. Oklahoma is just not ready yet. So that was that, and then the thriller to start the college football weekend, Illinois versus Nebraska. Unbelievable game. It was back and forth all the way. I think Nebraska went into that half with the momentum, with a crazy touchdown catch at the very, very end of the half, about 16 seconds left. And they edged out Illinois with the momentum there. But back and forth second half, Illinois kept responding. And the difference was overtime. Illinois kept that same energy, and Nebraska didn't. Their offensive line, I mean, I think it was a point where it was they had a 3rd and 42 on their last possession. And so they were just getting to Dylan Raiola there at the end, and they just couldn't stay in it. But a really great game, a thriller, and I think a game where people thought Nebraska was the favorite there, and Illinois showed up and showed out. But definitely a close game. Both teams still look good, but that was an exciting one, especially to start the weekend off. And then Arch Manning, he led Texas to another win against, I believe it was Nobody State Tech University. He played okay. He had 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, middle of the road game, but they put up like 50. So who cares right now? But interesting to see. I know it's a lot of Arch Manning hype. And people saying, oh, Texas will have a decision here. No, they won't. Quinn Ewers is healthy. He's coming back in and he's starting. The toughest thing, again, I harp back on this Bama Georgia game coming up, which we're about to jump into, but you can't measure these teams on these cupcake games. And even like let's say Bama, the Wisconsin game looks big, but it's like they weren't on Bama's level. They're not a contender. Texas and Michigan, on paper that looks like woo, like crazy win, but Michigan is incapable of throwing the football down the field. Like some of these teams some of these matchups are smoke and mirrors. Like it's not what it seems. So we'll see how Texas fares when they play, somebody with that they can compete with or can compete with them. But Nonetheless, Arch Manning, another big week, and another win for Texas. They're still dangerous, and we'll see. And then BYU to end it destroyed Kansas State. That was unexpected. Kansas State is a pretty good football team, and they dropped all the way from 13 to 23 after that loss. That was very unexpected. So um, that was that. Then we got quick hits. Utah had a tough game against Oklahoma State. They were able to escape it with their backup once again. Ryzen just can't stay healthy out there, man. But big win for Utah. I think they're going to be in the thick of things come the end of the season. Talked about Arch Manning's big win. Missouri, another scare for them. They were able to escape Vanderbilt in overtime. Not expecting that at all. Vanderbilt is not known as a threatening team, but Missouri able to get it going. We've seen some areas of some questions for Missouri, but nonetheless, they were able to get away with that. And then we had the crazy game of UNC losing 70-50 to James Madison. 70-50. This is a football game, folks, not basketball. I know that's when we're used to talking about North Carolina. 70-50. I was like, what is going on? I think James Madison had 52 at the half. So meaning they didn't have to score for the rest of the game. I mean, UNC wasn't on anybody's radar already, but that was just alarming. And then, James Madison putting up 70. I was like, man, that's crazy. But then again, I look at it, I was like, whoa, gave up 50. I mean, you almost had to put up 70 to walk away unscathed. Like, that's just obviously a shootout. No defense whatsoever. But that was just one of those scores that popped up and you said, what's going on here? What's going on? Yeah, what's going on? And then the granddaddy of them all, UGA versus Bama. Obviously the biggest game this week coming up. Biggest game of the season so far. Number 2 versus number 4. This is where we get our measuring sticks out. I don't know what to expect. This is going to be a thrilling game. I don't know. Georgia and Bama are both coming off of bye weeks. Georgia is coming off of a questionable, lackluster win against Kentucky. Everybody's kind of said, okay, just Georgia being Georgia. They play these weird games where they look like they're going to lose, but find a way. So let's see. Is that an anomaly? Or is that the Georgia team we get this year? This will be a huge game. I think I saw some post that said this game is going to feed families. I'm sure the tickets are $1,000 and trillion gazillion dollars, and we'll just be able to walk away with where these teams are at this point in the season. But scary game for both teams. I think Georgia obviously wants to get over the Alabama hump. Some people have said it is Nick Saban, and he's the reason. Now that he's gone, move out of our way. And some people have said, no, it's Bama is just better. So we will see. But somebody's O must go. Let's talk about the scenarios here. What happens if Georgia wins? What happens if Bama wins? Like, what's the outlook from this? I think if Georgia goes in and wins a close game or blows out Alabama and shows that they're not on their level, I think either way Georgia moves to number 1. because out of the top 5 teams, this is the first big matchup. Nobody would have faced anyone of that caliber, um, and being of that caliber. The number 2, number 4 matchup. I think you got to make Georgia number 1 team in the country again if they go out there and beat Bama, and obviously if they crush them. So I think vice versa. I think if Bama goes out there and crushes Georgia, Georgia is probably looking at that 7, 8-ish area for a drop, that top 10 type of thing. Maybe more, like depending on if it's a bad beating. But I think you don't want to lose, obviously, but if you do, you obviously want it to be close, because then you're flirting with that being at the edge of the college football playoff seeding, and you just make a much harder road for yourself to win a national championship. So I do think these teams are pretty evenly matched, so I don't foresee a blowout, but it's the first test. Who knows? Very, very tough road game for Georgia. And again, their last road game, they didn't look great against an inferior team. So it'll be good to see. And then for Bama, if Georgia crushes Bama and they're at 4 now, I think same thing. They're gonna go in that 10-ish range behind some of those teams. But again, not foreseeing a blowout here. I do think it'll be competitive. Think it'll be back and forth, some highs and lows. Prediction, it's tough. Obviously, Georgia fan, so I'm going to say Georgia. I do think Alabama has some questions on offense, specifically their secondary. But I kind of think Georgia has some questions with their receivers. We don't have Brock. We don't have McConkey. But we do have some weapons. So I think Georgia is a bit better. I can see a 27-24 win, something in that range. But should be a good game. And as always, go Dogs. And wrapping things up, we had the Anthony Joshua versus Daniel Dubois fight here in London. I said here in London as if I'm in London. I'm in Atlanta. That was a beatdown from start to finish, nearly. I mean, Anthony Joshua was the favorite, and I was unaware that he was the overwhelming favorite. Like, I didn't know that this was such an upset, and it's probably because I've never looked at Anthony Joshua like that. Like, maybe back when Wilder was in his prime, and that was the big fight in the heavyweight division, Joshua versus Wilder. But the Ruiz loss for Anthony Joshua and just his fighting style, I just have never thought he was just this unbreakable force. He was rocked early and just was really playing survival out there for pretty much the rest of the fight. He did, what was interesting is he got knocked down several times. I mean, Dubois was just getting whatever he wanted. Anytime he applied pressure, he was hurting AJ. But right before the big KO, he hurt Dubois. He kind of buckled him, and he started to stumble, and you could tell AJ just went for broke because he knew he was hurt. Like, he was hurt the whole fight. He didn't have his balance. He was trying to make something happen, and he just went for broke. He saw that he hurt him, and he didn't hurt him enough because he got caught, and it was bad. Couldn't get back up from it, and Dubois wins the fight that I thought was pretty evenly matched. I was like, dang, I could have won some money on this. Like, I didn't think that AJ was just this overwhelming favorite that I found out after the fact. But that was a entertaining fight. With heavyweights, you're always going to get some action. They very rarely go the distance, but big big knockout punch there. And from start to finish, AJ just was seemed out of it. He got hurt so early in the fight and just was trying to survive. I saw Daniel DuBois mention that he's open to a rematch. In my opinion, that won't be necessary. I mean, I think he's a better boxer and better just all around than AJ. Like, I think he's the better fighter, and I think AJ is probably out of his prime. I don't see him doing much damage, and it's kind of like, who do you fight? Like, the boy beat you like that. You're gonna go fight Usyk again? You're gonna go fight Tyson Fury? Like, it'll probably be worse. So yeah, I thought it was a one-sided fight. Obviously, was a one-sided fight, and I think AJ is probably done. Can probably get some fights if he wants to, but I just don't know where else he goes from here. I don't think he's a very competitive any longer. So that was that. It was a straight to the point matchup there. We do have next month Better Beeve and Bivol. I can't wait for that fight. That's going to be huge. That is circled on my calendar. And speaking about circling on your calendar, the big games this weekend to circle. Obviously, it's really only one game in college. I looked at the other matchups. I'm like, oh yeah, this is, everybody moved out the way for for Georgia, Bama. So that's obviously number one. But under the radar, Illinois at Penn State. That should be a good one. Illinois obviously coming off a big win, trying to make another statement on the road against a good Penn State team. So we'll see how they match up. And then Bills at Ravens, Sunday Night Football. Ravens, this is your chance to get back on track. Bills, this is to show everyone this is serious. You are serious. And you can beat good teams too. So that will be a fun matchup. And the Monday Night Football game, Seahawks at Lions. No. Seahawks are undefeated. Lions aren't. But going to be a good one. Always fun to watch those games out there in Detroit. Tough road game for Geno and those guys. I think the Lions walk away with that one, but we shall see. Listen, another great episode here. A lot of good football games. We are in the midst of football season. I mean, it seems like it's just taken off. Just felt like we were waiting for week one, and we're moving right along here. But big games coming up this weekend. We will see how they go. Go Dogs. Go Braves. I think my Braves are still fighting for playoff position. We have to sweep the Mets, I believe. And I don't know if that'll happen, but go Braves to the end. So we'll see. I appreciate you joining. If you are not already subscribed, please subscribe to the YouTube or whatever podcast platform you listen on. And we will be back with another one next week. See you, folks.